All right. So main event, final table, 2021. Let's go.
People at this table right now are feeling.
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I have never been in a spot like this. 99.9% of poker players never get to be in a spot like this. So even a seasoned pro like Fry Aldemir has to be feeling the pressure of the magnitude of this event.
And you did see the shuffle up and deal by Vince Vaughn, the new poker ambassador for the WSOP. Vince going to join us in the booth in just a little bit with some more
I mean, he's going to be feeling
and
for a
telling you
while.
where the World Series of Poker will be held next year.
Yeah, of course.
He's been on TV at a significant final table
Raising it
before.
up with a suited ace.
But
Aldemir starts today with 35% of the chips in play.
Yeah, hard to be sweating too much when you know you're the best player at the table and you've got 35% of the chips in play.
Turn of the rail. It has been too quiet in the Thunderdome, and now a razor ticket gets a massive cheers.
like, I guess you're thinking like, don't fuck it up. Don't fuck it up. Like,
Right.
I mean,
friends met the world.
but really, like,
probably some nerves to start out.
already
They
rich.
play
Like,
part of this level. We're going to play about an hour,
I
20
don't
minutes
know.
at this level and take a short break. See Chase Bianchi.
I'm
the
sure
great
he's
stories.
sold some
Very
action
religious
here
man
too,
after
and he
having
wants to make
troubles early in life.
some
Lost
money.
parents.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so I guess this is kind of an interesting spot. I'm trying to see. Okay, so the dealer. So this dude is in the. I'm trying to figure out how. Like the on the top, like what position he's in. It's kind of difficult to figure out.
Yeah, he's got 15 bigs and he's.
I just don't understand what seat he's in because it goes dealer, then small blind, big blind. So I guess Parks and the hijack, or the cutoff.
He's third act right now, so he's like EP middle.
So they're nine-handed. So he's an MP. Okay. And for what it's worth, I think this is a pretty loose open. I mean, it's kind of a cool steal spot, but yeah. I mean, I guess the only thing that I really like about it is that the button is pretty short here. So button's not going to be able to peel in position like super wide here. So I guess it's okay. But I would definitely be opening up
Religious man after having some troubles early in life.
a little bit tighter at this point.
He has the suited ace.
For what it's worth, this is
This
fine.
morning
Yeah,
that he tweeted that just got a text from my landlord
You
about
know,
he's got
like
a rent
first
price.
hand of the main
After our
event, he
lease is
got
up,
15
no chance he
bigs.
knows. It's funny
Like,
timing.
Oh, we'll talk about timing. We've
I
got
don't know.
aces for the youngest player
I
here,
don't
Jack
know if
Paul,
I
for
feel
26 years
there.
old, UK, Canadian-born pro.
All right, so I guess this is a good spot here. So this is 15 effective. You see a guy from MP open off 15 bigs, and you look down at aces in the big blind. What's our play here?
yeah, I'm actually curious to see what people, who do we have in here? We got Fountain Flood. Curious to see what he says.
Found a flood
So I
calls.
think I just call. Because I think I just call.
Shitty calls.
I definitely think I have a deep, large chunk of flat here, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him raise in this big of a spot.
Mm-hmm. Joe says in a vanilla MTT, I just jam, but in the World Series main event, I just call. Now, do you mean just like a regular MTT final table, or just like at a random time in a tournament? I'm guessing you just mean at like let's say you final table the big 11 and you're in this spot and you have aces, you just rip. So I would assume you're saying that because you think that his calling range is going to be a lot tighter, which would make sense. Fountain Flood says with the ICM, I think people are overfolding to jams. Yep, that's 100% true in every tournament, but you can multiply that by a million, I think, at the main event final table. So yeah, I'll let you chime in, Max, and then I guess I'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot. And where's Oliver? Oliver is.
He's in the big blind. Yeah. So it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just got to call. The guy's only got 15 bigs. You got to give him, give him the opportunity to barrel off.
If I had kings, I'm probably almost always raising here, but I think with aces, you can definitely slow play a bit. I think you can't read too much into any of the body language here, but I do think I do think this little smirk he looked like after he opened was kind of precarious. Sort of looked to me like he was trying to look a little overconfident in that spot. So I'm probably flatting given all those conditions, but obviously I'm seeing the whole cards here, and not playing for 7-8 million, so
Yeah.
it's a little easier. Of course.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't look into trying to soul read somebody's smirk too much, but I'll kind of go from other things that I'm really looking at.
I'm
So,
a little more exploitative than you,
yeah,
sir.
yeah, I would say so with that. But anyway, so I think there's a couple things going on here. One, I guess I'll just start off saying that I would mostly end up flatting here, specifically with aces, and probably just rip all other pairs. So, reasons for like just jamming like kings, queens, jacks here. So he is opening a fairly at middle position, and he's also opening off a really short stack. Now, not only that, but we are nine-handed at the main event final table here. So his opening range is going to be even tighter than it would be from an EP open here off of 15 big blinds. So you can kind of multiply that by even more in this situation. So his range overall is going to be pretty tight. So I wouldn't really be too upset with just like jamming kings through tens, because I think he probably has a pretty strong range from this position, and it's likely if you have like kings and queens that he's still going to like call you off with jacks, tens, ace, king, stuff like that, because again, his range is very tight. Now on the flip side, with aces specifically, you kind of block those hands that are going to like snap call you off. Like, I mean, ace, king, I guess being the notable one that's really going to snap you here. And then also a hand like aces, it just like, I think it's the best one to kind of slow play, obviously, because it needs the least amount of protection. So I would probably be very high frequency flat with aces. And then even if he has a hand like kings, queens, there's going to be a lot of boards that they're just going to be able to get all the money in at 15 big blinds anyway. So even if he does have like kings and queens here, there's very few boards that are going to run out where all the money doesn't get in for 15 big blinds anyway. So again, with aces specifically, even though I know this guy should have like a very strong range here, this is clearly the very bottom of it, I would say, with the ace-4 suited. I would still just choose to call with aces and then be jamming like tens through kings here always. And then if I get a fold, it's kind of like whatever. I guess he has some steals, but for the most part, he's going to have like a lot of strong hands here. So I can kind of see reasons for jamming and calling, but with aces specifically, I would definitely just call here.
Yankee with just over 12 big blinds behind. Jack Calder
I
has
love
a
this view.
jam and just take down aces, or you can slow play this.
Yeah,
Just
although I really don't care about the stare off here, so.
The limit hold'em event of 2016. Basically retired from being a pro poker player. And he'll get another-
Okay, so this is really interesting. So
Terrible.
for one, this size doesn't really exist when you like 2.5 it, and I mean it's kind of interesting they just snap folds, because this is kind of a hand that almost needs to call. Like, I think he's just realizing that this size doesn't really get used, and essentially people only do this with like kings and aces really, because the way you're doing it, you're really not, like, you have no fold equity. Essentially, you need to be calling with close to any two cards you're opening. Like, let's say if he has ace-10 offsuit, I guess I'd be more likely to fold a hand like that, but like ace-4 suited, I think flops a lot better than a hand like ace-10 offsuit. So I don't exploitively like hate the fold, because he should just be like super strong in this spot, but at least like make it like 4.8. And again, in most situations, you don't really have 3-bet folds for 15 bigs effective, but these might start getting in there at final tables, but I just don't see it like ever happening. If like somebody ends up like bluff raising in the spot, I would be far more surprised than anything. And I think this just like really gives away the strength of his hand. I would prefer a jam more than this anyway. Well, I can't say that, because like he should still have hands that he has to call with even versus this size. But the thing is, you may as well like turn your cards face up and just scream at the guy, "Hey, I have aces." You know what I mean? And this is kind of a spot, I think, where I've talked with you guys earlier about how these like third pot river bets don't really make a whole lot of sense when you're the imposition player, because you usually just start polarizing at that point. So when I see somebody use a really small bet, there's just like no bluffs, and there's only like thin value or hands that they want to get called by. This is kind of like a similar situation in a pre-flop scenario, where this guy's never making it this size with a hand like, let's say if he's doing this with like king 8 suited or ace 5 offsuit, he's never making it this size, like never. So when he does this, he's just like, hey, I have a really strong hand, I don't want to just call, but I want to put more money in here. So he's just only playing his hand rather than thinking about what he's doing with his entire range. and your hand is way more disguised if you just flat here, and then you're playing like a low stack to pot ratio here anyway. So yeah, this is just a really terrible play, I think, in general.
So Oliver chose instead to 3-bet to about 40% of Yankee stack.
I mean, yeah, like your risk is low, and you're so disguised when you just flat.
Right, or at least like make it a size where it looks like you could be bluffing, you know?
A late ad of a lot of
Yeah, I think that's something that
traveled
British poker history, Great Britain.
is sort of making things sizes that are like that different from like your holdings. Or like we talk about telling a story a lot, and a lot of people don't take that into consideration. They just look at their cards and like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, but they don't think about like, well, what would I do if I had this? And that's like, you want to tell a story of like, you want to be disguised in a lot of scenarios.
The other thing is, I guess, like, do you guys have like 3-bet folds, 15 bigs effective in that spot? Like, no, like that's just not a thing. Like maybe at a final table that dynamic kind of comes into play, but it would still be like very rare, I think. So it's just, I think even the most amateur players would kind of be able to spot that out. So if you're playing against a bunch of whales, like, yeah, maybe exploitively you can make a play like this. But, you know, this is the main event final table. I would assume these guys are at least somewhat coherent to, like, basic poker strategy. And this is just like a play that any, you know, weekend warrior is going to be able to sniff out, let alone, like, doing it at a final table here. So I can't say enough.
What do you think that maybe just the nerves of being the first hand and being at the final table got to him? Because like that's a play that, like, I think, I mean, literally everybody in our group just said, you know, just collectively said it's just a call.
Yeah.
You know, and me and you. So that, you know, like, that's not the biggest sample size, but I would venture a guess that probably 95% of people would probably just flat it. Or, I mean, you like, reshoving makes, I mean, shoving makes a lot more sense than 3-betting. It's like you said, you might as well have just whispered in his ear that he has
You're gonna get action from more hands by shoving than I think 3-betting there, but I'm curious on your thoughts.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's like, at least there's, you know, when he 3-bets, he's just so face up. When you shove, I mean, there are, you know, a lot of hands that you would shove with, you know, to put pressure on a short stack.
So
is he in the small blind with these?
No, he's in the big blind.
Big blind.
Okay.
15 effective.
Definitely like the shove there.
So it's just like a play that does not exist outside of having pocket aces. And I think you asked, like, is it the nerves, like, getting to him? And I would say no, it's just him not understanding what he should be doing in this situation. So like, just by seeing a play like this tells me a lot about the caliber of this player. Like I said, it's fine. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised. Like, I think it would be pretty gangster to have some 3-bet bluffs in this spot. But the point is, if anybody's 3-bet bluffing in this spot, they're just never making it that size. But it's kind of crazy. Like, even so, he basically went from 2x to 5x. So I guess technically he probably does have a little bit of fold equity here, because of course, like, he's going to be getting the right price to call off if he like makes it 6x after a 2x open. But the thing is, like, we can't call, you know, for Chippy V because we're at a final table. So even though we're getting the right price, doesn't necessarily mean when ICM is in play that we just call there. So, like, again, maybe we get 3-bet folds, but nobody's ever making it for that size. It's just not a thing that's happening. Realistically, like, can we name any other hand that we would be making this play with here? Now, it'd be gangster if, like, he knew, like, that he did this as a bluff, but I mean, he just had the hand that everybody does it with. So I think it's less of a
if he does this with like ace-5 suited, like, I mean, I actually would love it, you know, but the fact that he just has the ace is
yeah.
You know.
So it's more him, like, not being prepared and not kind of understanding the situation, what he's supposed to do. So yeah.
To come to World Series.
We'll go to
One
this
random question.
Who's won?
There wasn't a delay between the last day of play and the final table, right? Like, I know they used to wait like months and promote it, but because of COVID, this is like right consecutive.
Yes, that was another question that I was going to ask, because, you know, when they do like the November 9 and stuff, like, and you get, you know,
they can study these exact people
yeah.
and their styles and the chip stacks and run this exact scenario and drill it over and over and over again. And those guys used to do that, and they would also bring on these high-level coaches that would watch the play on 15-minute delay and report back to them. I mean, it's like a whole operation at this level. So I'm sort of wondering if anyone knows the dynamic, if this was just like regular consecutive days of play or if they had prep time.
I mean, honestly, I don't even think we have to look too much into it. I mean, it's just the guy not knowing what to do, really. And the whole fact of the November 9, I fucking hate too, because like so much of like, you know, your play comes from, you know, the reads that you've had, like with all the play that you play with these guys over the last couple of days or whatever. So when you take 6 months off or whatever it is, I think that completely like ruins the whole dynamic of the final table. So I can't say how much I hate the whole November 9 dynamic. I mean, we don't have to get into that too much.
Everything.
Yeah, so
The main event, Mansour Mahmoudi
Yeah.
was born in Iran.
It's really dumb.
Lives in London and is most of his life in England. Did win it in 1990, but no British born has ever won.
And they're good players, and they will tell you that. Now,
this is the guy that punted with the 10s, right?
Papa MC, Alejandro Lococa, 29 years old,
Oh.
from Mar del Plata.
Oh,
Argentina.
I remember.
He did say final table the main event that he
Yeah,
would bring
like
us a wrap.
Poker News or
Remember, he
something.
said he was doing a
I was
wrap
going
with
through
us,
it through the
and
hand.
I don't know
And he
exactly
made
when,
like
he did say
some
maybe the first shot he won.
super
Yeah,
weird
so,
call
and
off.
you talk about, you know, the
that
British-born
the
players.
guy
We could have
actually made
two
a really good
Argentinian-born players go back-to-back. And last year's hybrid
Ace
main event to this year's hybrid main event, if Lococo goes through with Damien Salas wins.
Well, I hope he's a man of his word. Otherwise, I'm going back to country
So
wrestling.
guess these.
So I 100% believe that that guy is capable of punting.
Every step of the way.
He's the hardcore beast.
Argentinian rapper.
Yeah, nice.
Norman has a similar tattoo. You can't see it.
Interesting.
So this is an open from the cutoff. Oh no! Whoa, he's got 10 bigs here. So
After the dinner break last night.
okay, so this is an interesting spot. I don't know what happens here. So he's got 10 bigs here in the cutoff. Queen 9 suited. What are we doing here? He is the shorty for what it's worth.
He's got a terrible seat with Aldemir right next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Woof.
So what are you guys doing here? 10 bigs, Queen 9 suited, main event, final table.
Shitty says ICM fold. Joe Beagle says I'm shipping it.
What's he team?
Shove.
Is he like close to the button here?
He's in the cutoff.
Yeah.
So Max, check out everybody's 2 cents here. I'm actually gonna pull this up in ICMizer because I'm just gonna write out the stacks here, and then I'm gonna give my 2 cents and kind of see how accurate it is.
He's on the cutoff. Joe Beagles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just everyone give your 2 cents right now. What you would do in the spot. Max and Kenny, you guys can chime in. I'm going to just put out the numbers here, and or the seat and stack percentages here, and then once you guys are done giving your 2 cents.
Short stack. I mean, ICM is you know a little less important. I think that I'm less likely to shove with Aldemir to my direct left because he's going to be calling off pretty wide
Mm-hmm.
in a spot like that. So I think that I would fold this one. Although, I mean, it is a pretty good spot. I wouldn't fault anybody for shoving, that's for sure. But I think that I would lean towards fold, and that might be a nitty fold. But, you know, it's the main event, and every ladder is significant, so I would probably wait for a little bit better of a spot.
Okay. Kenny?
I think if I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I think if like Sakelmas was the big blind, this might be a little easier to get through. But
Yeah.
it's close. It's close. I mean, I'm probably a fold here, but I think it's probably closer than I'm giving it credit for.
Okay. So I'm almost have these numbers in here, guys, real quick. So big blind has 100 big blinds. So yeah, okay, so before I look it over, and just to show you guys that I haven't run it yet, because I don't know if I'm going to be right or not. So this is essentially how the stacks look here. This is at 50-100 right now. We're going to run this in ICM. So I do agree that we definitely need to be tighter in the spot because of ICM. So of course, like for Chippy V, I think this is 100% a fist pump shove. And then, of course, we can't just be ripping every hand we want because we are at a final table, so we definitely need to be tightening up our range here. That being said, I think there was a really good point being made that Aldemir is to his direct left, which is like just the worst seat to not only be the short stack, but to also have this massive chip stack to your left as well. Now, I don't know how much that comes into play right now because he's really only push fold. Yeah, I really don't know how much that comes into play. My instinct is that he probably needs to be a little bit more aggressive because even if he does double up here, he still has to be like super tight after. So it's not like Aldemir's on his right and just opening up every single time before he can put his chips in. So I might actually be getting this completely wrong. So, but I think my immediate instinct is to just rip it in here because of the big stack being right to his left. He is the absolute shortest stack, which means for him, there's less ICM at play than anybody else. Also, there's like a lot of deep stacks in this tournament who don't necessarily just have to be opening super tight here. So he's really going to be struggling to find a whole lot of spots. This is also a spot he has like a fair amount of fold equity at 10 big blinds. At the same time, I also think like people are going to call a lot tighter in these spots too. So like, yeah, this might be a little loose, but he's also should be getting more folds than he normally would be. So my instinct is probably to jam here, especially being the absolute shortest at the table. But I would not be surprised if we see a fold. And I guess the biggest thing I'm curious about is whether or not the big stack being on his direct left is more or less of an incentive for him to be jamming a little bit aggressively. So we'll just check it out here real quick. So again, this is ICM as well. So you can see every spot here is like, really thin. Yeah, so all these spots here are pretty thin. He's shoving about 27% of his range here. Queen 9 is going to be one of the lightest shoves that he ends up getting it in here with. But, there's a lot of these hands that aren't making that much money here. I mean, for 10 bigs, like aces is only winning 1.25 big blinds in a pot like this. And again, this is me probably needing to understand a little bit more about FT dynamics and why a hand like aces is only winning a blind and a quarter here as a jam. So I mean, for chips, it is definitely a jam, but it is definitely like close to the bottom of our range here. So that being said, I don't think I would insanely hate a fold here, but at the same time, I think I want to say that the big stack on the left kind of has a bit of an influence on him to kind of put his foot on the gas a little bit more than he normally would be. Because even if he doubles up, he's still going to be in an awkward spot because he won't be able to just like open super wide. So his biggest weapon as a short stack with the chip leader on the left is going to be not to open, but to be like open jamming and then like 3-bet jamming on some other stacks that can be opening up a little bit more on the loose side because he can really be picked on quite a bit here. So I guess what we see here is that if he does jam, it's definitely winning, but not by much. And the thing is, all these spots get like really tight, really close when ICM is at play. But with him being the absolute shortest stack.
Fountain Flood just made a good point. I wouldn't think that Correa is calling wider just because he has the chips. The longer the shorties are in, the more little pots he can impose his will and throw his big stack around. That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's another point I was making is that like, we do have to shove a bit tighter, but we're also going to be getting called lighter as well. Of course I agree with Aldemir, and I think we brought that up before, so way to point that out there, Fountain Flood, that the more short stacks that are around, the more advantageous it's going to be for all of the bigger stacks, because that means all of these mediocre stacks are going to be forced to be playing even tighter because their main incentive is to wait for all these short stacks to bust. And then once all the shorties are gone, then they kind of start needing to like loosen up their play a little bit and not really be as passive as they would be in other spots. So yeah, I absolutely agree that we need to be jamming a little bit tighter, but also that we should be getting these through a lot tighter. And actually, a pretty good point, like I said, that Found and Fled pointed out, that a guy like Aldemir might actually be calling a little bit tighter than, let's say, a guy like Sekilmus? I don't know, something like that. So because he does have more, of an opportunity to kind of punish the table even more than he already is. Like, he's going to be looking to take all these small pots here pre-flop, and the more these shorties that are in there, the more guys like this dude here, Remitio, Lococo are all going to have to play a little bit tighter while they wait for these other shorties to bust. So yeah, good point here.
Yeah.
Suited cards as well. I guess that's
And the pay jumps are
1.22 for 7, 1.4 for 6. So small.
It'll be interesting if he makes it like
increments as we go through.
400K here. So yeah, so this would be really interesting if he goes like 400K, and let's say
You mean 4 mil?
or yeah, like if he makes it like 4 mil here, and then let's say Oliver goes all in, and then Sekilmus like rejams, then East can actually fold here down to 5 bigs and potentially take a pay jump. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him just put like half his stack in the middle here, and then obviously like if anybody jams, he has to call it off. But like for example, if one person jams and then another person overcalls, then he can probably get away from his hand and also make a massive pay jump. And this becomes more advantageous like the bigger the pay jumps are here. So I actually think it would be pretty baller if he makes it like 4 mil here, and then obviously just calls off versus the rest.
He's dropped out of school, going for his master's to start playing poker. He met a poker pro.
And again, I guess I'll say it does suck if you put in like half your stack and have to fold, but like just having chips at this point of the tournament is like very advantageous. Each chip obviously counts so much more the deeper you are in a tournament. And now as a short stack, your main objective is to ladder. So even if he puts in half his stack but can potentially ladder up, I still think that's better than just ripping and then potentially like having 2 people call off, and then he's having to win a pot 3-handed where he might have been able to get away from it if he just puts half of his stack in and then gets to fold and potentially move up. So Joe says, given how top-heavy the main is and initial pay jump so small, more merit to jamming correct range, in chip EV that is. So let me reread this again. The initial pay jump so small.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are they? Oh, they are pretty small.
I mean, they are. I mean, in the context of the main event, like 100,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but in this context, it isn't a lot, considering you have to get to from 9th to 5th to even get twice the 2x the amount.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I actually didn't see the pay jumps. Thanks, Found and Flood, for bringing those up, actually, because that is 100% relevant. The more steep the pay jumps are, the more incentivized you probably are to ladder up. Now, in terms of the final table, the payouts are pretty flat until you make like top 4, it looks like here. But that being said, like it's still 10 buy-ins here. Like who knows this guy's story? Like 100K could be a lot of money. If he's backed, I mean, like that's another 50K in his pocket. I mean, there's so many factors that come into play here. If this guy's like a rich guy, then yeah, it might be more incentive for him to just kind of YOLO it. But if like 100K could mean a lot of money to some of these guys in here. So there's really a lot of things at play here, and that's where a tournament like the main event, I think, becomes a really interesting one to kind of look at. Because even though in terms of the final table, the pay jumps are pretty flat until we get to like top 5, but in terms of the actual dollar amounts we're talking about, like this is a lot of money. This is life-changing money for a lot of people at this tournament. So yeah, good dynamic you pointed out there, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to be like, oh, it's just 100,000. Like, that's
Right.
$100,000.
Yeah. So, hold on, just gotta plug my battery in.
Oh,
A
wow.
small condo is a small condo.
Raise.
You know what I'm saying?
This is actually kind of baller too. So
Yeah, I don't hate it.
I mean, he blocks a hand like Ace Queen that's going to call him. If he gets flatted, he has a hand that plays pretty well. I guess I would rather rip in a hand like 10-9 than Queen-9, because with 10-9 you kind of unblock like the ace-kings, the king-queens, the ace-queens that might call you. And then with Queen-9 specifically, you kind of you block a little bit. Well, when you get called by like the ace-queens and the king-queens, you're kind of fucked. So I don't hate this either. It just kind of sucks that I would almost like it a little more if he was from an earlier position, because from the cutoff, like, you can be opening relatively wide. The reason why I kind of hate it is because Aldemir is on the button, and you're really kind of giving him a good price to call. I mean, he's going to be calling tight here anyway, but you don't really want to do anything to kind of incentivize him to put in money here. So, I mean, it sucks because it looks like he's going to wake up with ace-king here anyway, but I specifically don't like this play with Aldemir being on the button here. And then also he's racing into the big blind, who has 100 bigs as well. So he's going to be defending quite a bit. Even though this range is pretty tight, like, who knows how these guys are defending. But yeah, I don't hate this, but I probably like it the least. So yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens.
That was bad influence. You know,
Well, I mean, he's going to open, he's going to 3-bet, and then East is going to fold. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. For this price, he might have to call.
145 or more.
Just barely made it.
Yeah, it's still half stack though.
Yeah.
He photoshopped his
Yeah,
face
so he
onto
probably
a
just
little
folds.
Winner though, there's the. And what a seat he's in. But,
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you get a situation like that where, like, if he gets it in, like, yeah, he's a 3-2 dog, but, you know, that's not a terrible spot to be in where you're the short stack. And now, like, when you raise fold a stack like that, you have even less fold equity than you had before. So yeah, it would kind of be different if there were like 3 or 4 other stacks around his size where I might be a little bit more cautious, but he's like by far the shorty right now, so I think he really should be taking the most aggressive pre-flop actions.
No hard, fast stop time tonight. Talks, you know, we'll get down to 4 players, whatever, but it's going to fly by the seat of the pants and see what happens, and then we'll come back tomorrow and crown the champion. Oliver with the ace-king and the raise.
And Holmes with a pile of chips and 2 blockers in his hand and a small blind. Definitely can consider 3-betting.
What you've seen from Holmes, what do you expect tonight? We really didn't see him get out of line. He was pretty solid. The chips came to him. More the same, do you think?
I think so. I mean, he's one of the few pure recreationals left, self-destruct.
So okay, I guess we'll say, what do you guys think about the call with King Jack here in the small blind? This is versus a cutoff open.
This is something
Agreed.
Oh, my bad. I came across this exact spot last night at a final table, and I kind of like this as a 3-better or a fold. I just don't think it plays crazy well, like from the small blind post flop here. But yeah, I don't love the call, but I don't. I mean, it's King Jack in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. This is, in my opinion, this is just bad. This doesn't play super well post flop. I guess you're just assuming that he's opening wide on a button and that you're gonna have, you know, an advantage, but you're just out of position with a crappy hand.
Okay, so for 40 bigs, I'll just start with this before I point out somebody who absolutely nailed it in the chat right now. For one, at 40 bigs, this hand is 100% VPIP. It's going to mix between calling and 3-betting 100%. You should never be folding in this spot. Obviously, at final tables, we need to be a little bit tighter, so our strategy is going to change. And I'll go over to Joe, who absolutely nailed this spot. Given ICM pressure, I much prefer a 3-bet. I agree with that, even if the charts will tell us to mix. And then the spot that he really nails is that the chip leader is no longer in the hand, so he's now the chip leader, effectively, with everybody else to act. And the villain is also a middling stack, and villain is much more inclined to be playing a whole lot tighter because he has all these other short stacks that really that are, you know, on the verge of busting here. So even though in theory this technically might be a mix from what the charts will say, with the dynamic of this table, Holmes should absolutely be pressuring this guy. Like, this is where the big stacks get to bully the middling stacks, where there's all these short stacks around here. Obviously, Oliver wakes up with a hand and he has to raise fold, but that's not really what we're looking at here. Joe absolutely 100% nailed this hand, literally said everything I was going to say about it. So good find there, Joe. Yeah, I hate the call for that reason, although in theory it's not terrible. I think folding would be the worst option, but I also think 3-betting is far, far, far superior in this spot to just calling here.
Yeah, I feel
just
like
a little bit more of this,
like Kenny said, it's just a 3-better fold. Well, I know that you don't like folding. This just seems like a prime spot to 3-bet, but it's like, you know, it looks like it's an older guy. He doesn't. That's probably not in his wheelhouse, I guess.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about whether or not these guys actually know it or not. We're just talking about what should be happening here. I'm not trying to see if like somebody wrinkled their nose and that gives away the strength of his hand. Like, I mean, that's not. So what I'm really trying to find out here. So
listen, I made a living off that shit for 2 years. Right.
How dare you?
yeah, I'm an online snob, Kenny. I don't know what else to say. I'm just gonna admit it right now. So.
A little bit more play, maybe C3 kind of play.
Oh, so okay, so another spot here. What do you think? How do you say his name? Bianchi? The dude with the beard, Bronson, Action Bronson.
Call him beard dude.
Yeah, it's Bianchi.
Bianchi. Okay, cool. I like Action Bronson more, but anyway.
I will say that without getting too much into it, that this guy in particular's body language.
Oh, we lost Kenny.
All right. He probably thinks I muted him because he was talking about live tells. So, but no, I didn't.
He cut me off. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that his body language is definitely giving off more than anyone else at the table, but it's not really important for the context of this hand, probably.
Well, I don't know what he does here either. I mean, if he's just gonna flick it in, then it's kind of whatever. But if he does, I mean, and he's looking all nonchalant, I think he's acting like this is kind of like a no-brainer call, which I don't really agree with. I mean, I think calling's probably fine, but so yeah, I guess I'm a little curious which hands. I probably am a little bit more prone to call with the suited variety because that hand is going to play a little bit better multi-way, and it kind of hurts a little bit more too if we have to squeeze fold a spot like this, where we have a hand like King Queen offsuit. I think it blocks. It obviously like blocks kings and queens, ace king, ace queen very well, and definitely would be a pretty big win if we could just take this down pre-flop. Multi-way. It also plays worse multi-way, the offsuit variety. So here I think I'd be a little more prone to be squeezing here. I wouldn't hate a flat at all, but again, this is just going back to him like Oliver, like he should be putting pressure on Oliver. Holmes calling here as well. Oh, I'm misreading his stack. Okay, so he's only got 13 bigs. Oh, so he's gonna rip here. He should rip here. Because I would guess for the most part, Holmes is going to be relatively capped here. I would say the strongest he'd be calling here. I mean, if I'm Holmes and we're like 40 effective, he's probably like 3-bet calling 10s versus this guy because, I mean, even if he's wrong, he still gets to get it in here. Yeah, it's where it kind of gets interesting. I would assume for the most part, Holmes is probably calling like too wide, not squeezing enough. So I would assume his range is going to be relatively capped. So there's with a little extra dead money in here and Oliver opening a relatively big stack from a late position, I would say this hand is a fist pump like squeeze jam here. Yeah, I definitely misread that. For some reason, I thought that Action Bronson here had the 100 bigs and Holmes had like 40. So I don't know why, but yeah, he should be squeeze jamming here.
But he played solid yesterday.
Bianchi with a hand in the big blind and a decision to make.
Oh.
There it is. Nice shot. He still has fold equity here too, so.
Oliver snaps this off.
So now back to Jack Oliver. He wants a count.
I mean,
Chance to
Oliver's
move
not
up. He's
exactly
starting to
going
have
to be
40
excited to.
All right, later, Joe. Sorry to cut you off, Max. Joe's got to get out of here. Yeah, Joe's walking out on a high note. He's pulling a George Costanza. Nice, Joe. All right, man. Hope to see you at the next one.
Lines. He's very healthy, and he could get much healthier right here.
Yep, and totally fine play from Bianchi, especially with Holmes flatting. You just consider that dead money. It's not often a trap from the small blind.
Away, and we've got our first all in and call.
Moneymaker. Looking for a job, looking for help right here.
Looking for a queen is what he's doing, and that does not help. So you see his outs, upper left of your screen. Right now, queen will put him in the lead. Chase Bianchi came down here just to play the main event. It's the only tournament he played at the World Series. And now he's down to his
Wow,
last.
how rich. Come to the World Series, just play the main.
The river card is painted.
Oh,
It's
King
intact,
Jack.
and we do have our first
Womp
knockout.
womp.
Chase Bianchi out in 9th place for $1 million. Jack Oliver doing the deed with the Ace King play.
Yeah, so good shove by him, I think.
Nice payday. Ace a little bit.
First one out, he started the day with just 8 big blinds. Instead of jamming his queen 9 suited, he ends up raise folding it and made
Yeah,
a
I mean,
100K jump as a result.
With all the variables at play, like the button's not going to be thrilled to call off part of a stack, and you're most likely ahead of the small blind. I guess you could have like maybe 6 suited, but you're probably ahead of the small blind, even though they're also, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that was like a real-time demonstration of why Holmes' hand plays better as a 3-bet too. Because, frankly, if he 3-bets, King Queen's in the grinder there and probably just has to fold, or at least I do.
No, I think King. I mean, if the small blind 3-bets, I mean King Queen snap folding for sure. And then even Ace King in that spot, I wouldn't be surprised if Ace King like just flatted there with how. I mean, he probably has to 4-bet jam. Honestly, it's fucking gross. Obviously, if and again, I don't know how Holmes has been playing. Like, if he's been playing super tight and then you get 3-bet by him, then maybe you can flat Ace King. But in theory, like if he should be 3-betting very aggressively. So even if you're 40 bigs deep and you see a 3-bet there, like you just kind of have to go with it because he's supposed to be 3-betting like super wide in that spot. And again, I'm not sure what the dynamic is. If he knows him to be a super tight guy, I wouldn't like hate if he ended up flatting Ace King versus a 3-bet. But versus like a standard like chip leader in that spot, I should be 3-betting really aggressively. Even though there's ICM at play, even though there's a lot of shorties, I still think you have to rip Ace King because you block all the strong hands that are going to snap you off there. You're flipping against a lot of other hands that are going to call you off. And then you just end up winning the pot a whole lot too, which is also a pretty good result versus like a super wide 3-betting range. So Queen 9 didn't get it in, didn't get there, did it? Was 8-10 Jack out there. I guess I missed that spot. The Queen 9 of diamonds that raise folded.
Oh yeah, he raised folded.
Yeah, he raised folded to Ace King on the button.
Yeah, so he's still in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are happy.
So he's
to be
about to rip
joined
Ace
by
Jack
Vince
with
Vaughn. You saw do the
8 bigs.
shuffle up and deal. Vince, welcome and welcome to the World
And
Series
to
Poker
have
family.
the 4-bet
Pleasure to be here with you guys. I've listened to you for a long time, so it's nice to be in the loop. We apologize.
Yeah.
So gross, considering at the time there was like probably 3 shorter stacks, unless I miscounted that, at least 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a gross.
It's gross. Yeah, you're not loving it for sure.
Yeah.
Like you're probably doing it, but like, yeah, you're not psyched.
I mean,
about
I'm not good enough to fold there, so I'm probably sometimes flatting, mostly ripping Ace King there. I'm probably ripping more than 80%, but I'm hating my life while I do it in my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, all good, DMC. All good, man.
Well, the booth is not as spectacular as one would expect.
We don't have to tell him that. We've got green screens and
Well,
everything. Don't
he's
worry
the
about
master of
that.
ceremonies, Nick.
All right, so this is interesting. So there's a dead small blind here for what it's worth. So there's less money in the pot to start the hand. So East is ripping from the low jack, it looks like, for 8 bigs. What do you guys do here in Sekilmas? I'm going to say. That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Illness.
Yeah, so what do you guys do here with Ace 9 suited?
Is he in the big blind or did he open?
East
The
open
illness is
from
on the button.
East open from the low jack, and Sekilmas is on the button. Oh no, it looks like he's on the cutoff because Holmes is the dealer, and then there's a dead small, and Remitio is in the big blind. So technically, this is an MP open here or an MP shove. So what do you guys do with Ace 9 suited in the cutoff here? DMC says fold.
I'm probably folding, but as Steve pointed out about 20 times last night, I'm a pre-flop nit, so.
Well, pre-flop nittiness is going to get you further in final tables than being a pre-flop spewer. So I wouldn't take that to heart too much there, Kenny. Obviously.
I'm mostly joking, but yeah, I'm probably folding here, especially at the main event final table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with those two significant stacks behind you, like you're at risk. So, or like you could be at risk. So I don't think this is the way I want to go out of the main event.
With 22 mil here specifically, I feel no reason why I have to be the sheriff here, and probably feel it's more effective to maintain my chip stack at this point in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's close for what it's worth, but I'd probably end up folding. Another reason is because East should be jamming a little bit tighter because there is a little bit less money in there with the dead small blind, so that is definitely going to be a factor here as well. Fountain Flood says Doug Polk did a long interview with Correa afterwards. They went over some of the big hands. We could watch that after to see what his thinking was after we analyzed them. Yeah, we could do that for sure. So let's get through some hands though.
Maybe he can get it upgraded for next year. Thanks, Vince.
I'm definitely going to run that up the flagpole. Budget is going up, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, East, who had to raise and
like he shoves there.
Wow, this guy just snap calls too. So I mean, this tells me a lot about this guy. Is he's probably kind of unaware about a lot of different dynamics that happen within the course of poker tournaments here. So I'm guessing if I get 3-bet by this dude and I have ace king in the cutoff the previous hand, I'm probably just flatting ace king. This guy's probably just he played in he's got his weekend game that he plays in. They did a 20-person $500 sit and go. Whoever wins goes out to the World Series of Poker, and he just ran pure and got here. So yeah, when he just snap calls here, I mean, it's always like jacks plus in this spot. So yeah.
And with ace jack and Holmes with the queens. And here, fireworks. A lot of fireworks. The blinds are
like by the speed of this call, I see something trying to hold on to the action, to be honest. For a little more money.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it should be. Because now there's other people behind as well. So if I have like ace queen suited or pocket tens and I see this guy snap call, like I'm out. Like I almost don't even want to look at my cards. I'm kind of puking if I have kings. But I mean, I'm not folding kings, but still sick.
Now the queen's up, and he is in trouble.
Queen and the flop. Couple of hearts there for East.
All right. So irrelevant. GG.
George Holmes just that's strangers, and then it's nice not to be a stranger with Vince Vaughn. What even the final 400, 500, let alone the final table, the days, the commitment these guys have made, and then when you see them get down to a hand and all the gamesmanship that goes on, it's super compelling. And what is the role of ambassador? We haven't had one yet. We just had good-looking people before walking around without a title. Now we have
Vince Vaughn, the bloated carcass.
Yeah, well, they say Grandma's trying to get more about the commissioner role, someone who kind of calls shots, makes some decisions. So
it looks like that Park realizes now that he's the short stack. He definitely has a much more intense posture, facial expression than he did when what was the other short's name was still in there. So he's definitely preparing for battle. That's how I interpret this.
Yeah, Biaggi.
Yeah, I mean he should be like again, he is by far the shortest. Well, not by far. I mean, Kilmis is kind of short too, but other than that, all these guys are basically 50 bigs and deeper. So essentially, like there's a lot less ICM at play here for a stack like him because he really needs to make a move here. He can't really afford to just wait for other people to bust because everybody's playing so deep. And these guys are also going to be playing a lot of small ball too because they recognize that Park and Sakilmis are both shorties as well. So not only can they open wider.
Frankly,
go ahead.
The next pay jump is not much bigger than the last one. So he should be thinking in terms of just trying to find the right spots to chip up the best he can.
Right. Plus, he's already done okay, like getting 2 pay jumps here as one of the shorties coming into the final table. So he's already like, this is about as good as things could have gone for him. And now it's time to, put the pedal on the gas, but not necessarily like go out of his way, of course. But can't be scared in his spot, basically.
Maybe we do things a little differently next year. Can you get rid of the designated bidder? I'm just curious. No, the designated bidder is going to.
So this gets real interesting. Where 110 bigs effective. And no. Okay, so he's 60 here. So what do we do with ace king offsuit? The chip leader opens here.
we're really disincentivized to play huge pots against Aldemir, but I still think he's king strong enough where I'm probably 3-betting here. But I would understand if the prevailing logic was to just pot control against Aldemir here a bit.
Okay.
But I would imagine with the chip stack dynamic as well that Aldemir's range is probably the widest at the table. That's something to consider as well. So, I mean, especially from the big blind, I'd probably re-raise here.
Okay. Fountain Flood agrees. DMC getting in there. Shitty calls.
I think 3-bet sizing is probably the more challenging question for me in this particular spot.
Okay,
I'm
so
not
we
really
can
sure
discuss
how
that
to
actually,
do it.
Kenny, if you want. I'll tackle that for you. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that, but we can talk about if we're going to 3-bet the sizing we want to use. So I'll just get DMC says facing specifically Aldemir, I raise for sure. Can you? Okay, I was gonna say, can you elaborate? And there you go. Because he wouldn't be a guy you can expect to outplay. Yeah, I agree with that. Fountain Flood says if we have 3-bets only with Jacks Plus and like Ace King, then Correa will pick us apart. Yeah, I mean, as opposed to like how so? Like he's just gonna like snap fold like marginal hands that he should be defending. He'll be face up. Yeah, he could be. But I think the thing is, it's just not going to be a whole lot of 3-betting in these positions in general, especially with Holmes here. He's very disincentivized to play big pots here. From the 10-10 to 9-9 hand I remember talking about, I don't think he's really aware of this dynamic in the first place. But yeah, I guess so. Going to Kenny, we'll say when you were talking about sizing, I don't necessarily think that you should have 0 3-bets here. I'm really okay with either option. For one, Aldemir is opening super wide here, and you don't really want to be playing out of position. If you can just take the pot down pre-flop, like that's a decent win here, so you don't have to play out of position, super deep stack against a strong player. So I can absolutely see reasons for 3-betting here, and I'm okay with them. And again, I'm just going to say right now, I don't know the exact answer, but I think the best thing that we can do is look at both scenarios. And if we can find benefits for both, then we should probably incorporate both. So I agree with 3-betting because we don't want to play out of position against a strong player who has a super wide range here, and we have a very strong hand. So yeah, I think 3-betting is good. I also think calling is good because we don't want to blow the pot out of position, 100 bigs deep, again, with a super strong player. Do we want to be playing a bloated pot out of position with a super strong player? Probably not. But you know, sometimes it just is what it is. Like we can't play passive all the time just because we fear certain opponents. Like sometimes we just have to play our hands and kind of go from there. Now, when it comes to the sizing Kenny was talking about, now we did say that we're going to be super polarized here. Like a lot of hands that we would normally be 3-betting, we're going to be calling with, right? Because we don't want to blow pots. Can we agree with that? Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
Okay. So that means when we do 3-bet, we're going to be 3-betting a very small part of our range. And what happens when we end up using a polarized part of our range? What usually ends up happening? I guess I'll ask you specifically, Kenny. We can go big. Okay. Yeah, Fountain Flood. There we go. So yeah, the more polarized.
I would assume we're going significantly big here. Like I'm not. Like, if we just take it down pre-flop, like, that's a you know, it's not a huge win, but it's a pretty significant win. And putting yourself in position to price him into calling is just going to make your life miserable. So, probably, I would go, like, 4.5, 5x 3-bet here.
I am not upset if I'm getting the fold from Aldemir here.
Exactly.
Yeah, Max, I think at 100 bigs, like 4.5 to 5x is kind of the standard size.
Right.
So I think we can even go bigger in this spot. I think we can go like
60 bigs,
12
bigs deep effective.
Oh yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. My God, I keep mixing him up with Holmes for whatever reason. So yeah, okay. So then like I'd say it's still like 9 bigs is probably the biggest we would normally be going here if we're just standard 60 bigs effective. So I wouldn't mind even going like 10 or 11 here. You know what I mean? So it would kind of be gross. Even if like Aldemir like 4-bet jams, I might just end up folding because I would assume that Aldemir is going to be like, okay, like he recognizes this guy probably doesn't want to just blow pots here against him. And since he is going so big, he's going to know that he's like really polarized. And I don't know the dynamic these two have, but if I'm in Aldemir's shoes and I see this guy just like 11 exit here, and I think he's like a mediocre player at best, I'm mucking a lot of hands here just because I think his polarized range is just going to mostly be value and going to be lacking with the bluffs. So, yeah, I do agree with making it a little bit bigger here in general because he should be pretty disincentivized to be 3-betting here in general. So, yeah, really interesting spot. I'm kind of curious to see what happens. I'm assuming with a guy like this, after I saw the ICM punt he had, he's just going to standard 3-bet here because he has ace-king, which, again, I don't really hate.
You were saying 11 big blinds, so like 8.8, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's what he was implying.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, like,
I learned a lot from. I'm not 3-betting large enough at final tables, apparently.
So I'll tackle that real quick too. For what it's worth, I think in like standard points of the tournament, like early to mid stages, the deeper stacked we are, we can be using like pretty big sizes. Obviously, the deeper stacks are, the bigger we have to make it because we don't want to price people in to play a deep stack pot when they have position on us when we're super deep. Like we have to make it a little more expensive. But since each chip is a lot more valuable at final tables, and on top of that, people are going to be defending tighter than they normally would because of the final table dynamic, we can actually go a little bit smaller at final tables than we would be going at like early to mid stages of tournaments. Now, in this specific situation, I don't think that really comes into play because this is a point where 3-bet ranges are going to be a lot more polarized than they would normally be. So we can also work that out as well, Kenny, if you want to spend some time talking about like
I need to optimize my sizings a lot because my instinct is to make it a size, which I'm assuming is not a thing here at all. I'd probably make it like just over 6 million, like 6.2 or something like that. But that's should probably just size up because we are so polarized here. We could probably just ramp it up a bit.
Right, and that's the main reason we want to go a little bigger. What's up?
What are we doing here?
What are we doing? We're just in terms of the hand or in terms of what we're studying?
Oh, I'm gonna leave. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I'm just asking which one you're talking about. So we're checking out the World Series of Poker main event final table right now, and what we're discussing is what we want to do in Lococo shoes versus the chip leader, whether or not we want to be 3-betting or calling. And then if we are 3-betting, we're discussing the size that we want to make it here and why this might be a different situation that they're in right now as opposed to like a more standard situation either at a final table or at regular stages of the tournament. So anyway, yeah, we can just play it from now and see how it goes and then go from there.
You know that.
I'm gonna head out after this hand.
All right, cool.
Here's soup.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, for what it's worth, Slimy, you can stick around, but she immediately peaced out. So.
Yeah, actually,
How about this guy, huh?
I don't know what's going on with him. He's got an exciting jacket. That I know.
Look up, he's a battle rapper from Argentina who has made our final table. And he's got 88 million Twitter followers.
A battle rapper.
We love him.
All right. So he does call here. So it appears that he is, somewhat ICM aware, which kind of goes against the 10s to 9s hand. I remember we discussed right when I first hopped into the Discord. So, and again, I don't hate this. I think this is fine. Absolutely. This shows that he is kind of aware of the dynamics of the table. So, yeah, I don't hate this at all.
For us today, we
Well, I guess he's not necessarily aware of the dynamics of the table,
Yeah.
He could just be scared and just like, oh,
I absolutely.
That's true too.
Coco just wants to.
I may even find a call myself sometimes, but it's like a very small portion of my range. I think I think I'm 3-betting pretty tight here, but I definitely think, at a final table in a big spot, you're only going to get hands like Ace King so often. I do want to apply pressure with it, at least to get some 3-bets in there for the table image reasons, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true too.
Play it safe and not get too many confrontations.
But I do
with
think
there.
that we're
And
still
one thing you're
wildly
bringing with us
underestimating
today,
just
Vince,
flag
is
here.
we're
Like
back in our.
it is important to incorporate that in a percentage of the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a percentage of the time, but I'd probably work it in at least a little bit.
I agree.
Regular window next year, the World Series of Poker 2022, last day of May to the middle of July, and a new home.
All right, I'm gonna head out.
That we're going to the strip for the.
All right, later, Max.
Talk to you later, man.
Much closer to the high roller to get on that wonderful ride there that spins so freely here in Las Vegas.
Are we suggesting that the battle raffle does not want a confrontation? That doesn't feel like that makes sense to me.
He's playing against his image.
I think it's the only thing he knows, right? Look at him.
Spade check.
His street cred, his Twitter followers are on the line, guys. What do you want?
Oh yeah, and he's got a library out here too that could be a lot of fun.
He's writing rhymes. Is he writing rhymes or what's he doing? Is he counting odds?
He keeps telling the rest of the table that he is not a poker player, he is a rapper. So he's going to make mistakes, but I think he's hustling.
I don't understand what you say. I know poker. That's what he says. But he's much.
And when he's rap battling, when he loses, he says, "I'm not a rap battler. I'm a poker player."
That's right. It's nice to have a portfolio of 2 occupations.
Yeah.
So Vince, when you're at the table,
Yes.
are you playing no limit hold'em? What stakes are you playing?
Do something.
Just for the fun to see whatever it was that I never love to. Yes, it's nice.
All right, so he bets here.
Can you kind of?
What do you guys think about this turn bet? So
I'd probably bet here.
So he bets 2.7. So he bets like half pot here, looks like. Okay, so yeah, he bets half pot. Yeah, I hate so many things about live poker. So.
I don't like the sizing, but yeah, the thing is, this is why I would stake you in any live game you ever want to play in your entire life, because like you see this all the fucking time. Like this is completely, it just happens, and I don't hate this bet here because there's a lot of hands that I feel like Aldemir could get to at this point in the hand. Then just like a really weird spot here, king queen, ace queen, ace 10, like a lot of these combos that have a little bit of value but don't really have a set strategy here.
Okay.
Also, if you get called, I don't think it's very likely that Aldemir ace spades here, but I'm not really basing that off too much other than there's only one card that beats us here. But yeah, curious on your thoughts, of course.
Okay, we'll just go to the chat real quick. Fountain Flood says, I find recreationals flat ace king way more than regulars. Yeah, depending on the situation, it would kind of be interesting in the type of player. I also see that people 65 and older that just check call ace king all the time, and I value on myself because they didn't 3-bet pre. This is live anyway. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. That's kind of the sweater Ruthless would wear. Nice.
Live cash, people play big aces, very soft pre-flop.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm talking in deep games, but yeah.
Okay. So what do you guys want to do in terms of the ace king? I think we heard you, Kenny. What do you guys do with ace king here once it goes check check on the flop? We get the jack spades on the turn. Phantom Flood says, I don't mind this bet. He might have the best hand. He has a spade. Aldemir checking back here allows Lococo to stab a good amount. I think that's true. I'll just wait to see what you're chiming in here with, Phantom Flood, before I give my 2 cents. What up, Bob Dog? See you in there. Phantom Flood says, I think Correa can call all sets, straights, probably even flush draws. Correa might be checking back a hand like kings and aces on this board, though. 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Although it's less likely because we do block both of those hands, and he's opening a super wide range, but that doesn't necessarily mean that exactly what you said is not true. It's just far less likely, I guess, with his exact hand. But, that doesn't mean that that situation can't actually happen. So, in general, this flop is definitely going to be better for the big blinds range than the pre-flop opener. But that being said, Aldemir can just open kind of whatever he wants. So a lot of these boards that don't appear like so great for him might actually be better for him than like a normal range from his position might actually be. So Even though this should be better for the big blind, it is going to be slightly better for Aldemir. But at the same time, his range is also going to be super wide, so it's going to have a lot of crap as well. So once it goes check on the flop, the jack, all the face cards are going to be better for the pre-flop opener's range than the big blind's range. So I think the size is like kind of okay. I would probably, if I was going to bet here, I'd probably go third potish myself, because I think as well as there being like aces and kings in the check back range, I also think there's going to be some flush draws here as well. Obviously less likely because we do block some flushes with the king of spades here. So I don't hate a bet, but my main instinct is to mainly check here for a couple reasons. One, I don't really want to be bloating a pot here with a hand that could absolutely be the best hand in this spot against the other chip leader here when we're out of position. And for two, this hand is a hand we can easily check call. Like we can check call any bet size with this hand. So not only do we likely have the best hand once flop goes check, or we have the best hand enough anyway, but we also have a hand that can check call here, no problem. And by checking, we also allow Aldemir to end up bluffing hands that we end up beating here. And then at the same time, if the river does come a king or an ace, Aldemir is very likely, if he has a bluff, to end up representing cards that end up hitting our hand pretty well. So although I don't hate betting in the spot, and I think his size is kind of okay, I would probably be a little bit more likely to check with this exact hand, both having likely the best hand and also easily being able to check call versus any bet size here on the turn.
Just sit back and find a way to end up a little bit ahead every night. Makes you feel good.
And I think Aldemir is probably just going to fold here. Well, I'd be surprised because he does have a spade. He has a gut shot straight. I wouldn't hate a call in the spot.
The World Series of Poker, and more people will know about it and come to it, perhaps.
I think he probably does call because he's going to be betting some Jack X here, some like Bear 8X that he's beating with his ace high.
You know, this thing
So,
has been so popular and
I would be
so
surprised to see a
popular,
call here.
part of it. Great surprise for you, gentlemen. I know you guys are probably, and you, Jamie, I know you're probably feeling fresh. We're gonna go ahead.
His spade out can definitely be good if he doesn't have the best hand already. Yeah.
4 or 5 hours on. Just to
I like this.
No problem.
Yeah.
You guys got to feel terrific and rested. What are you averaging tonight?
Like
Can I
day
ask?
nine.
What are you averaging tonight?
Well, when we do the turbo, I will be on an Army cot if you want that type of announcing.
And now we get this situation where, okay, so before we even see an action, what do you guys do with ace king here on the river once we bet turn? Are we bluffing? Are we trying to show down? I think this this pot just got really interesting here, so I'd like to hear you guys' 2 cents. What we do with ace king if we bet turn?
This is a weird spot.
I agree. DMC says check. Founding Flood says I'm regretting my turn bet and checking.
My first action here is probably to fucking tank and replay this hand in my head.
So that's why it's good to think about, you know, you're obviously making a bet on the turn, but then you also want to know, like, okay, if I'm betting the turn, what do I do here on the river? So it's good to kind of plan in multiple ways. Like, okay, if I bet the turn, am I going to be following through on the river? Because technically, like, I think his hand is good for bluffing because he does block, like, some of the strongest hands Aldemir is going to have. Like, let's say, king, queen of spades, king, 10 of spades, shit like that, basically. So, yeah, I guess I'll hear a few more before I end up chiming in here a little bit more.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what pairs can I get to fold here, if any, and what can I credibly rep with this line? I think our hand sort of at this point looks like what it is.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm probably checking back.
Okay. Are you checking back because you're giving up, or are you checking back because you think your hand has enough showdown value?
I'm checking back because I think I have some showdown value, and I don't really see an optimal reason to bet the river. Like I don't think we're getting. Like Aldemir's smart. I don't think he's really folding a pair here unless we take a really strong line. We're just so polarized, and playing the hand the way we did. Of the polarized hands that we're most likely to have, it really, really does seem like we're playing ace king and trying not to blow the pot too much.
Okay.
And now we're in this weird spot that Aldemir understands and has the chips to pressure us really badly if we put some chips out there. I don't know if he's likely to do that, but we're just exposing ourselves too much, I feel like.
Okay, yeah, I agree with some of that, and we'll come back to that. I'm just going to catch up with the chat here real quick, and because I think there are being some good points addressed here in the chat right now. DMC says that's why this line seems poor. Agora says consider bluffing, but given opponent has major chip advantage, not a great spot to bluff, to be honest. But checking shows too much weakness. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And this is going to be a point that I'll touch on at some point here as well. Fountain Flood says definitely learned from your thought process, or from your turn thought process. Okay, cool. DMC says no 3-bet pre, but bluff turn out of position. I think you mean, like, I guess elaborate there a little bit more before I comment. Fountain Flood says, what are you targeting by betting? I can address that at some point here too. Fountain Flood says, Lococo could have 2 pair. Jack X even flushes in the spot, so his story is fine, IMO, but this isn't a hand I want to be turning into a bluff. Okay, yeah. Do you mean like turning into a bluff on the river after we bet turn, or you just wouldn't have bet the turn in the first place? Okay, I'll just wait for that. DMC says, build a pot on the turn in a possibly 25% equity spot out of position after not raising pre with the goods.
This seems like a spot where Steve would bluff.
Okay. Oh, okay. We'll cover that.
There's flushes and straights, and there's probably a lot of stuff in retrospect that he could probably be in here that I wasn't considering initially, but yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts, of course.
Okay, yeah, I'll touch on a few things that were addressed here in the chat and that I'm going to address. So I guess I'll start with our line after we bet turn, because my main strategy I think here would probably be to just check all turn and reevaluate on the river based on the previous discussion we had on the turn. So once we bet the turn, Aldemir is somewhat capped. He likely is probably betting most straights here. I think in theory he probably can check 7s, 6s, and 5s here, this deep stacked, like pocket 7. So he should be trapping some sets here. Now I don't know if he is or not, but in general, Aldemir's range should be somewhat capped. He will have some strong hands, like I said, like pocket aces, pocket kings. And then maybe he checks back, like let's say some 6-5 suited to pot control and kind of deception on like a really wet board. So he probably has some strong hands, but he rarely has the nuts unless it's like ace king of spades specifically, or ace queen of spades, things like that. So in general, Lococo is a little bit more uncapped than Aldemir is, although Aldemir can still have some strong hands. So let's go from Lococo. So I don't hate the bet on the turn from Lococo. It's kind of whatever. The board's good for him. If he is behind, he has decent equity to catch up. If an ace or a king comes, he can like kind of slow down and pot control, and Aldemir may end up bluffing these cards as well. So I absolutely don't hate the bet on the turn. Now, when we get to the river and Aldemir calls, a couple things are going on. For one, I don't see a ton of hands that we're beating here that aren't specifically like, well, I was going to say if a hand like 10-8 or 10-9 was checking on the flop, they make a pair here on the river. There could be like a hand like King 4 of diamonds that Aldemir is kind of checking back here that I'll have to bluff. But we also block like some of that shit too. So I think in general, his hand, although it looks like it has some showdown, I think he probably needs to bluff it. And then like even if he does have the best hand, I think Aldemir is going to be bluffing hands that are worse than Lococo's. That's not specifically ace queen here. Like ace queen with the ace of spades probably just checks back here and tries showdown. But it could even bluff. But I do think ace king probably doesn't have a ton of showdown at this point. And if we're going to start bluffing on the turn, then we probably just have to follow through on the river. Let's say to put some pressure on a hand like, let's say king 6 of diamonds, ace 5 of hearts, let's say like 7-9 of diamonds, you know, shit like that basically, that might end up playing the flop here kind of slow And so in theory, it might look like this hand has some showdown value. But if we're going to start betting the turn and we have a pretty good blocker to the absolute strongest hands here, I think we probably are going to be bluffing this river, or at least we should be, pretty high frequency. And with the king of spades, I would be betting pretty big here, really to put some pressure on that like 7x, 6x, 5x, maybe a hand like queen 10 with the 10 of spades. So some shit like that. So if I'm in Lococo's shoes here, I'm making it 10 million here minimum. Could even argue for like 15 mil in this spot to really put some max pressure on and to what should be a relatively capped range here. And I think we get to do that with the spade blocker here in general. Now, again, I haven't seen this hand. I'm going to assume that a guy like Lococo, I've kind of been shitting on him. Like, maybe he's not as bad as I've been saying, but I'm just going to assume he's like, oh, I have ace-king. I probably have some showdown here, so he's just going to check back. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does check back. What do you guys think Aldemir does with ace-3? Do you think he checks back, or do you think he ends up turning his hand into a bluff?
I mean, frankly, Aldemir is better at poker than me, so I trying to guess what he's gonna do is probably not gonna work out that well for me. But
well, he can still give you 2 cents. We're here to learn. We're here to learn.
I'm just saying, part of my skill in poker is my self-awareness, and I just feel like I'll make a guess that he probably turned this into a bluff, but I have really no idea.
Okay.
Well, I think maybe with this stack size, he might leverage. But I will just, to circle back on the pot or 1.5x overbet, that's something I can really get behind.
Mm-hmm.
But my initial thought when I'm thinking through pots is like, you know, like closer to 2/3 pot in my head. So like when I'm considering that, I need to do a better job of considering overbets for bluffs more. I don't think I'm balanced enough with my overbets.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can always work on that too, for sure. So anyway, I guess not a whole lot of people touched on this, and we don't even know what's going to happen there, but Agorist says that Aldemir is probably going to be bluffing the ace-3. I agree with that as well. I think the weaker your ace-x, probably the more realistically you get to end up bluffing here. And not to say, I mean, it's kind of weird because I wouldn't expect like better ace-x's to be betting a whole lot here on the turn anyway, unless they're specifically like maybe like ace-4, I guess here, which you would be chopping with anyway. But also he might just kind of recognize weakness from a check here on the river and just kind of leverage his stack and try to be aggressive here, really getting him to try to fold. Let's say if he has a hand like you know, 10-8 or 10-9 himself, that he ends up making a pair and tries to show down, he might just try to get him to fold a hand like that. So I agree, if Lococo checks, that Aldemir is probably going to bluff, but we'll kind of see what happens here. I also assume Lococo is going to think he has enough showdown and just check back here, but I would definitely give him a lot more credit if he did end up bluffing this spot.
How many cups of coffee are you on right now?
I do no coffee. Lon has coffee.
Yeah.
I don't coffee. I did early morning espresso, then I get here, I do a cuppa, and then depending how late we're going, you know, I got 2 knockouts.
Yeah.
But I got trouble, you know, so if I go past 10 o'clock with coffee, I'm up all night.
Yeah, Norm brags about not drinking coffee, but he takes frequent naps, sometimes between the flop and the turn.
Yeah.
Cool. Can we see in action?
You can watch Aldemir.
Well,
You can
here's
watch
the thing.
Aldemir blink in 1.5x speed, and it still looks like he's blinking slow. It's so weird.
That's because he's cool, calm, and collective right now. He's in the moment.
Sometimes they use swingers logic, where it's like, how long?
If they
6
go
days
5
is 20.
days,
Probably could have played Jason.
actually the
Do something.
But Gary Cole was the other announcer.
You have it sped up.
And I
too,
think
that's the
Lance
best
Armstrong's
part.
cameo in that might be my favorite celebrity cameo of all time.
It was a good one.
What are you doing?
Right, so he does bluff. Let's see what size it is.
The Mardi Gras chips go in.
Well, yeah, it didn't look like much, though.
So he bets 9 mil. Yeah, he
Okay.
close to potted it. Okay. Lococo, I'll give you the golf clap. All right. So I like that play actually. So yeah, I guess he did. I mean, if he bet the turn, he figured out that he was going to bet the river. So yeah, I'll give him the thumbs up on that play. I agree with that. I think he could go a little bit bigger, but I think his size is still pretty good here.
Hello, so there you go. Lococo takes some from the chip leader. 4 million. On to the final 34 barrels.
So I think that hand overall was played pretty well by both players.
And then when they get to the bottom, then they work on a World Series.
So that's when you do come to Las Vegas. Do you ever drive across the desert in the middle of the night to do it?
I have made the drive. It's not a bad drive from Los Angeles.
Should be a fold here.
Well, with no traffic, it's not a bad drive.
That's true.
That's why I love going overnight if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you guys a question.
Well, actually, I don't hate this raise here because the big blind is relatively short. So it's kind of okay for him to be putting a little bit of pressure on here. I do think this is a bit aggressive, but I don't hate it.
And it feels like the big chip leaders, are they wanting?
If I'm Holmes, I'm opening 10-7 suited after Aldemir folds. Holmes folded. Oh, yeah. Wow, so he folded that from the cutoff. Yeah, I mean, we've already established this guy's some nitty dude who's just YOLO'd his way to the main event final table. So, yeah, I 100% agree with that, Fountain Flood.
Let me ask you guys a question. And it feels like the big chip leaders, are they wanting to pick more on the middle chip leaders, or are they wanting to bully kind of the lower guys here?
Yeah, they wield the most power on the middling stacks right now. But
I might fold that.
Stack, so
Sometimes.
Don't be a net.
I am.
So, okay, well, I guess we won't talk too much about this spot. I think this hand can probably 3-bet or call. I think both options are fine. Him having more chips than Rimatillo here is kind of incentive for him to 3-bet and put some pressure on, but also this hand plays pretty well post-flop versus a wide range, so I don't mind either option here.
Each other that much. There's only people that can really hurt each other. So yeah.
I think you actually nailed his home game backstory. It's something like that. Been playing with his neighborhood boys for like 20 years. Yeah.
Right now, basically, there's 3 or 4 stacks if I was Aldemir and Holmes that I would be trying to get into confrontations with.
They're more likely to lay down because they know that one position's worth a lot of money.
Yep.
You're probably not aware of this, but in Hollywood, the biggest studios, they don't want to touch the middle studios. You know, but the little independent ones, they just try to, they just try to crush them.
That's exactly right.
I like this.
They're trying to crush those middling studios, much the same as
I love this.
That's a perfect analogy.
I don't love the body language in which he did it, but I love it nonetheless.
All right. So what do we do in the big blind here? Park has about 16 bigs with ace-jack suited. We got a button open, small blind 3-bet, 16 bigs. We got ace-jack suited. What are we doing here? We calling, we folding. I mean, we jamming, we folding.
This is really, really tough when you're at a main event final table, but I think with this chip stack and the dynamics at play, I'm probably ripping.
Okay. Agora says shove as well. So yeah, I think this is a 100% fist pump snap jam. Again, he is the shortest stack here with only 16 bigs. We have a button open that's going to be like at least 40-45% of their entire range. It's super loose. We have another who seems to be a pretty aggressive big stack here in the small blind, 3-betting here. Could be 3-betting very wide here, putting on some pressure versus kind of a middling stack here who's opening wide. And we're just super short with a very strong hand against 2 pretty wide ranges here. Even though we have probably 0 fold equity in the spot, I think this hand has to get in here no matter what. And I think this is kind of a fist pump jam. As light as I would be doing it here, definitely, I think even ace-10 suited probably has to go in here. I think ace-9 suited would be kind of close. Again, this would depend on how wide Lococo is actually 3-betting here. So I would definitely say ace-10 suited, pocket 8s maybe. Maybe even pocket 7s is fine because a lot of Lococo's 3-bet bluffs are going to be like ace-7 offsuit, ace-4 suited, stuff like that. So there's a chance if we have like 7s that we can be in a dominating situation where Lococo might just has to call it off or might even find a fold. So yeah, that being said, this hand just has to get in there.
More money on poker probably than independent. It's a self-top. No, he's got a lot of discipline to use.
Tank.
There he is, even a 3-bet odds. You do just want to play your hand shove.
Short stack now.
This guy's just tilted because he knows he's just folding.
What the heck? I don't know what he's doing. This could be super to the other guy, and he's.
God, live poker.
No, not all of it.
Park is definitely not.
It's so good.
This can't feel good when it's
So he 4-bets non all in at 16 bigs. Oh, so this is actually kind of baller. I'm gonna see what the size is first. So he makes it. He basically 4-bets all in. I was gonna say it would be kind of baller if he can like 4-bet like half his stack here and still have fold equity, because at times that like button jams and small blind rejams, he can kind of get away from it here. But I think he's just too short for the sizes being used for that to happen.
good for Park to recognize the situation. Just huge pickup for him.
Very nice.
Yeah.
When you said fist pump all in, you weren't kidding.
Well, yeah, I guess soul read.
Players left. 2 quick knockouts already as we take a to the third and finish the preview on sign up.
Are those
Oops.
That was like some
MMA
online poker
tennis is
thing.
so-
Leave yourself like 5 chips for no reason.
Yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
They all involve athletic exercise, but anyone who's doing MMA also doing tennis, I don't think so. Anyone doing tennis also doing MMA, I think you bring up a very good point.
Is it confusing? Is he from, maybe he's from a cold weather place,
So Remitio's opening the cutoff here.
Oh, Henry?
but he has indoor tennis? I don't know what's
Jersey.
happening.
From Jersey.
Is he from Jersey? Okay.
Jamie is from Jersey. You got all the in.
What do you think? Are you a snowboarder?
I,
Are you an MMA
I
enthusiast?
snowboard and I also
Sixes should be a pure call here for what it's worth.
beat up people sometimes. Yeah.
How's the serve?
I agree.
Football players, though. Big fans.
Fold.
Remedio has his glasses correct, and he did see both the ace.
Aldemir are probably going to flick it in here, although I think it's kind of close.
Chip leader in the big blind. You have a favorite?
I mean, Aldemir will squeeze a ton, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be, like, misplaying the hands that we're going to have. I mean, if they squeeze, I mean, we just fold. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, we should just be 3-betting because Aldemir can squeeze. Like, I mean, he's just going to have hands like this, too, where he calls. Or he's going to have a hand where he can't call, so he just folds. So if we only invest 2 bigs and have to end up folding, like, that's not a huge loss, I don't think.
For hand? We asked all
Is
the
there
players
anything
what
to be
their hand was.
said for maybe Aldemir's perception is that he's the best post-flop player at the table, so he's probably less incentivized to do that, more incentivized to see flops because he feels like he can navigate them a little better?
Maybe in a heads-up pot, but I mean, the pot's always going to be more difficult to play if you're playing against 2 opponents as opposed to 1, and of course that multiplies when there are more and more opponents in the hand. So between that and him just being able to to be able to squeeze and take down a pot, like even if you have a post-flop advantage, you're still playing out of position against 2 people in position. So you're playing out of position with a weak range against 2 people who have position on you. So there's definitely a lot of merit to just squeezing and getting people to fold who are probably calling a lot tighter than they should be, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, so you just play your range basically. Like there are going to be good hands.
So he's more incentivized. He's more incentivized to squeeze in these 3-way pots. But if it was a heads-up situation, he could probably take the small ball post flop approach if he wanted to.
Yeah, and then of course it's going to determine the dynamic, how many chips the player opening has. Like there's going to be a lot of different features and a lot of different hands that are going to change the exact situation. So it's kind of hard for us to just kind of generalize these strategies. We kind of have to look at every scenario for what it is and kind of go from there. So yeah. Anyway, I think this hand is fine, and Lococo should absolutely just be calling here.
My favorite hand that's not a great hand is King 8. Which I know you should never play around with. You always have to have one. I had stayed in one time early, and it did well for me, and so it's the one hand that occasionally I will indulge in. Okay. There's no reason to be a part of that hand. It would be
good here, actually.
Snap checks around.
Oh, that's true. Well, that comes first.
Hi.
How about you guys? You have a favorite hand that you play?
No, first of all, I don't play no limit hold'em because I'm not
You
capable.
love that.
So
I don't think that's true. I think you are capable.
I'm not
Oh,
capable.
I like to see you flip that switch.
I play King 8 in my personal life a lot, and it has not worked out.
I understand.
So this is a spot that can probably mix here on the turn. I would assume with Aldemir having all these chips, he probably just ends up making a bet here and probably is going to bluff club runouts. I think without a club, he probably checks here quite a bit. And with him having all these chips, like I said, I think this hand can bet or check, but I'm not going to be surprised to see him bet here. Lococo should be relatively capped. When he checks back here, he's probably betting most of his King X here, at least, multi-way here. Remitio is still uncapped here as well, but this hand is not good enough to check call with, for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean we just always bluff here. I just think that because he has more chips, he's probably going to take the aggressive route and just try to take the pot now and probably just end up giving up on bad rivers. So, but we'll see what happens.
Jack 10 suited. Jack 10 suited just looks like it's always going to hit something. So
He
it's
checks.
fun, but obviously,
Which I don't mind either.
But
Yeah. And our chip leader, Mir, says his favorite hand. He says that he likes aces a lot. This is his quote.
I don't like how this guy's just snap checking here all the time either. Unless he's been playing like this the entire time. But I am kind of not happy with how slow these people take to make decisions. But the snap checking, I don't really like either.
So,
he took a bunch of time with ace jack, which I understand.
3 different looks.
Yeah,
He's
definitely.
given away a
Mr.
lot.
Rogers sweater on the far left.
Right. What else we got?
Well,
This could be a
Yeah, there you
snowboarder
go.
look. Could that be a snowboarder?
oh sure,
Say no more.
He's very serious.
shades with the headphones.
Do they help? Do the shades help?
Well, they use it so people can't pick up more.
All right, just gonna take it down here.
Coco will take it. Of course, now that we have 4
Bet size is pretty good, I guess.
One flight of the main. What a run, what a ride. This is would never fail. Jump there.
Okay, don't care, don't care.
Well online and stuff, but in terms of like my life,
I respect his water game, though.
so
Not gonna lie.
that might get a bit more.
What's up? Oh, his water game.
His water game.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
From that forward, like, yeah, for sure. And it'll be great for us to see you again and again in the live scene. Thanks for.
He's a Mensa member, and he says he met his girlfriend. Does this make sense?
This is too loose. This is way too loose. You're opening into the chip leader small blind and another guy who has 55 bigs here in the big blind. For chips, this is a fine open, but he only has like 22 bigs, so this is even close in chip EV. But at a final table, I think this is just like a snap fold.
Says to you, if you're that smart, do you have to go on the Tinder to find a partner?
I know it's an excellent question, as you usually have an excellent question. I'm not sure that the
Nice found and flood.
I mean, you know why.
I'm not saying that the girlfriend.
What's up?
I mean, you know I agree.
Yeah. This is silly. Aldemir's probably going to 3-bet here pretty big, and he's probably just going to have to stack off if Park ends up jamming here. But yeah, I expect Aldemir to probably 3-bet in this spot.
It's not fantastic because I've yet to meet her.
And then it'll be priced in at 22 bigs, where he probably has to end up calling.
Those two things necessary. It's unfair.
What are your plans for?
Look on my wardrobe after seeing what's planned for that. I think I just have to try. What do you think?
Well, I think the future of poker is in good hands at the World Series of Poker with an attitude like that, Vince Vaughn. And we wish you all the best, and we're excited to have you as our World Series of Poker ambassador as we come back and to play in a big way May, June, July next year on the Strip.
So, interesting size. It looks like he's 3-betting to 3-bet fold here, which might be okay. I kind of don't like it with this hand, to be honest, because he is going to price a lot of hands. Like, let's say if Park has a hand like Jack 10 suited, Jack 9 suited, stuff like that, he has to call. I also don't think it's like a crushing blow if he ends up 3-betting and having to get it in here versus like 8s and 7s. I mean, it kind of sucks because when Park does jam here, he's probably dominated quite a bit. But his range is also just going to be so wide that he's just going to get so many folds in this spot too. So I kind of almost like calling a little bit more than I like this small 3-bet. I could be wrong with this specific hand. Maybe, yeah. I just in general, I don't like the size a whole lot. I mean, Park's going to fold because he has the absolute bottom of his range. But
About that, because we talked about the sizing on the other hand, and quite a contrast to this, right? What is this? Like 2.4, 2.5x?
It's like 2.5x pretty much, which I don't think makes a whole lot of sense at the stack depths here. So, but he is doing it with a quote unquote semi bluff. The thing that I kind of hate about it though is I think like hands might be okay to use in this size that you got a 3-bet fold to, but this hand just plays so poorly, like, and you're giving such a good price. I don't really like this play very much, but.
How much does Park stack size play into his bet sizing here, you think? You think he's sizing down for Park specifically, or I don't know, you think there's some dynamic there?
Yeah, but he can still like make it like 5 mil here and fold to a jam and give him a worse price to end up calling here. And this hand's kind of incentivized to not get called, I guess. For 22 bigs, like I said, I don't even hate like 3-betting size so big where you're kind of committed to call it off here. But that might not necessarily be the best play. I don't think flatting is awful either, but this hand is just giving such a good price. This guy should be raising like relatively tight. So even if he has a hand that he's not going to play for all his chips, he's going to have plenty of hands that he's going to be able to call to this small 3-bet that just play well enough post flop where you're just kind of like bloating a pot and not giving yourself a ton of fold equity and having to play a pot out of position here. So
listening to you, so it's fun to get.
I also don't know what the dynamic is. Maybe he thinks Park's like really tight here, so he can make it really small. And then if he jams, like he just knows he's absolutely screwed, so he can just easily get away from it. That could be a thing as well. So the dynamic with the table might actually go into it, and the specific reads on the players here. I don't know anything about any of these players except for the chip leader. We already discussed that he's pretty strong. So that could be going into it as
I'll be
well.
watching, listen.
The tables.
Park's gonna
Or
fold.
we disagree with Elizabeth.
10 minutes later, I might add.
433 survivors. He was
Speaking of 10 minutes, I think we'll do 10 more minutes here because it is about 12:50 for me right now. So we'll check out. We are about halfway through this, so we can kind of finish the rest of it. The next session we do, if you guys want to do that. So we'll find one more good spot and go from there.
Been smooth sailing since then.
Oh man, after dinner last night.
I do think it'd be
lit a
interesting to
fire.
talk about the heads up and three-handed play in another session.
Okay, yeah, we could do that too. So Holmes actually getting pretty loose for a guy like him. I mean, the open here is fine. I kind of don't like it because Aldemir does have the button, but you know they're pretty deep stacked. I'm just kind of surprised to see a guy like Holmes opening from EP here with the Queen Jack off, but it's fine. And in the small blind, what do we? I'm guessing we're mostly calling here. So yeah, I don't expect anything else to be happening here. Does Bliss know that he's? I don't think Bliss knows anything here. Kenny, can we do something about this?
Yeah. Yeah, give me a sec.
Okay, cool. It's just like the dog park all over again. Nah, I still hear him beacon. Alright, he's out of there. Nice.
Under his stack. He really got
I was just gonna
running big
server
bluffs.
mute, but I was having a hard time doing it from my phone.
All right. Yeah, all good. But you still do a better job than I would from my computer for what it's worth.
Snipping out bluffs.
My bad.
No, all good, all good.
Around 40 million to 55 million within an
All
hour.
right,
after
I like this call. I don't think there's really any other play
I
here.
really like his style of play for holding that chip lead too. He just doesn't take any big risks. He really does a really good job of just like
Correct,
holding
correct.
the host.
This is a guy I'm interested
100% agree.
in Holmes, and you know, again, very solid. We don't see him getting out of line. Of course, he knows.
It's gonna be pretty uneventful.
Sorcerers all around him, and so you get out of line, and they will know. He's done a great job navigating the.
I think Holmes can better check here. Both options probably fine.
One big blind
Bunch
bet.
of cash game players.
Yeah.
George as well. Played the main event, of course, 2019 in cash for 51K. Played
And once I see two checks here, I think I kind of like. I mean, again, I think he can kind of do either or. Oliver should still have like really strong hands in his range here, like eights, pocket eights, pocket fives, some ace jack of hearts, ace 10 of hearts, jack 10 of hearts, stuff like that. So.
Or so of Cherokee, which is the closest place to play from his Atlanta home. A lot of folks in there go up to Cherokee, but just would prefer the home cash game.
Yeah, came in 2019 just for the main event, and he cashed.
The commentary was as tilting as it gets this year. Yeah, I can kind of see why.
Show me the lights.
1,600,000.
But with the two short stacks out now,
Yep.
we can now just roll for a sleeve.
That's good.
Deep stack poker.
That wasn't very eventful, but so maybe we'll find one more.
Very small page ons relative to the top three.
What's up?
I was gonna say you gotta watch this shit muted, dude. You can't listen to these guys.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I tune them out.
this is probably a better idea for the next one. That might be the way to go, I guess. So yeah, the next time we run this, maybe that will be. I was wondering if we would actually get to hear some decent commentary. I don't know why I didn't pick up on that in the first place here. So I
like the audio one though, Kurt, because sometimes, rarely in this spot, but like the players will say some stuff to each other, and I think that adds some context. Not in the hand because of the new rules, but
right.
You know, I like to see the players interact and have as much context as possible, but you know, I just tune them out and listen to you.
Yeah.
So it's totally fine.
Yeah, we'll take the good with the bad, I guess.
Prizes. And that's something that it's hard to get in your head though when you're a rec player or you're even a pro who hasn't ever played on stage before. Because real money is still in your mind. You say, okay, it's still huge in real money, but when you compare it to the page ons in the top three, it's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, ace deuce should be folding here.
Istanbul resident Özgür Seçmiş.
And he's trying to become
Jack
Turkey's
7
first
should be defending.
event champion.
He's the second short stack right now, down to 26 big blinds, but again, still healthy. And there is.
You probably get a little bit of 3-bet with this hand, but I would mostly be calling.
In any country, it says where there is life, there is hope.
Kurt, you should do live commentary with the Manning brothers next main. Yeah, set that up for me. That'd be awesome.
He's got life. See how far it takes him. Oliver flops good.
Okay, so yeah, we'll discuss this. I think so. All right, go ahead. I guess you guys can just tell me what do you do here on the flop with King Jack? Are you c-betting range? Are you betting a lot? Are you checking some? What are we doing here?
I'm checking a lot here.
You're checking a lot here? Okay. Reasons why?
He can put a lot of pressure on us, and with a guy with 16 million there, like, you just want to kind of control the size of this pot, and you're in position.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many bad cards for you on the turn. So.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with all those points. Actually, I'll let a few more get in here if they want to throw in their 2 cents.
I agree, but my reason is because Odin taught me.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Anybody else here?
I check back these paired boards quite a bit, actually.
Okay. And we'll wait for DMC, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents.
I think I would bet just because you miss a fair amount of time and you win all those times, so then I would mix in my value with my range bets.
Okay, so you mean the big blind is missing on this board a lot?
Yeah, like it's tough to connect. I mean, I know they probably have way more 8s than us because they can call all 8 suited, but I guess like with 2 of them out there, I don't know, we can just bet 1 big blind here, win the pot a fair amount of time with our entire range.
Yep, I agree with that. And DMC says he's betting every hand here. So yeah, for one, I will say Odin will probably say that we c-bet here every time. This board is super, super dry. Big blind is going to have a fair amount of calls here. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit tighter with the final table dynamic, but he does have like 100 bigs here, so he's going to be defending relatively wide. Yes, he probably has an 8x advantage, but he's also just going to have so many trash hands that we can bet like 1 big blind here, and he's not even going to be able to defend appropriately against that. Against a guy like Holmes, I might just blindly bet here anyway. So, okay, the second point I was going to make is that I think Narco was mentioning how he wants to check back in this situation at least some of the time because the big blind can put a bunch of pressure on us here with the 8x or just a lot of other hands as well. And I 100% agree with that. And I think that at a final table, we can't just necessarily be playing exactly like Odin plays because it's not taking the final table dynamic into consideration here. So although Odin will probably tell us we can bet every single hand for a small size in this situation, with the final table dynamic, we need to be tightening up because we don't want to be getting ourselves into these situations where we're just betting super wide here because each chip is worth so much more. And we don't want to be getting ourselves into these spots where we have like relatively thin value here where we're just betting every single time. So although I agree that in like ICM, in chip EV formats, we should be betting every single time in this spot, I do think we get to introduce some check in this exact dynamic. So you were right in that spot. And Narco, on most of these paired boards here, not Narco, Kenny, I think in most of these paired boards here, you need to be betting pretty aggressively because although I do think the big blind has an 8x disadvantage, there's just so little going on in this board and the big blind's going to have a lot of ass in this spot that you're just going to print money like blindly betting like really small here and he just can't defend because there's just not going to be enough hands that he actually connects with, although he does have an 8x advantage. So with this exact dynamic going on here with who I know the big blind to be, I'm actually going to throw out that dynamic where I would have some checks here if I'm playing against, like, let's say if Aldemir is in the big blind here, I would probably be checking this hand at least at some frequency. But with Holmes here, who I'm assuming he should know that this guy is not the strongest player, I would just be betting here pretty blindly. And if I see Holmes kind of like check raising in a spot like this, I'm probably even folding a hand as strong as King Jack. I mean, I probably have to see one, but if he continues on the turn, I'm just going to snap fold a hand like King Jack, solely because I don't think he's capable of having bluffs in this spot, and he's going to be so 8x heavy. So although I do agree with this exact dynamic, I would be introducing some checks on a board where I would normally be c-betting range. I think with Holmes being in this situation and him playing a much more face-up style, I'm just going to simplify my strategy, bet like one big blind to 25% pot in this spot, and then if I face resistance, I'm just going to fold anything that's not 8x or better here.
Can I say one more thing?
Yep.
Kurt?
Yep. Go ahead.
Like for me on this final table, like yeah, I'm probably normally betting just in the regular tournament, you know, mid stages or whatever.
Okay.
But being on the final table here, and obviously you're just not gonna get the showdown very often that you need to be that balanced here, like, you know, betting your junk and betting your, you know, whatever, King X. So I don't think balancing is very important in this spot.
Yeah, so I agree with that, but I also think simplification kind of helps us as well. And if we just bet every single hand and kind of challenge our opponent to not only like check call and defend appropriately to a small size bets, but also check raise bluff enough hands that kind of seem unnatural, like let's say a 9-7 of diamonds here, like we're kind of challenging Holmes to come up with the check raises in that spot. And I just don't think he's going to defend or check raise enough hands where I don't think like just simplifying my strategy, betting every single hand, and just keeping the pot small. Like I would rather take that approach because it's always going to be easier for us to kind of simplify our strategy. Like we're not robots, we're not computers. Simplification is always going to be a better option for us as humans. And then when we're playing against, I would say, a more simple player who's going to play a little bit more face up, I would probably take the easier face-up strategy, not face-up so much, but the more simplified strategy here. And then, of course, if we check here, then we get to the turn. The turn's always going to make things a little bit more tricky because now we've introduced a fourth card. There's likely going to be more pairs Big Blind can have, more draws, a lot more. The spot just gets more tricky when more cards are introduced on the board here. So if we can just kind of simplify our strategy against a player who's probably playing pretty face-up, I think I'm kind of okay with taking the c-bet 100% of our range in this spot. Although if I was against a more capable player who might put us in more tricky situations, I would absolutely start introducing some checks in here. So yeah, so agree and disagree, I guess we'll say in this spot.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but if you watch this final table, and I don't know, like I watched the whole thing, like Holmes is playing very aggressive in a lot of spots. So he's not playing like face up or kind of like an amateur should play. Like there's a lot of spots on this final table, like he's playing super aggressive.
Okay, so I guess the only thing that kind of gave it away for me with Holmes, well, I mean, the 10-7 suited open he missed from the cutoff, I think was super standard. The snap call he made against an 8 big blind shove with pocket queens, I think is a really bad snap call in that spot because he just looks really nutted. I don't think any strong player would ever do that. So maybe he did start playing more aggressively at a certain point, just from what I've seen so far. There's been multiple alarm bells that have kind of rang saying that he's an amateur player, but I could be wrong. This is a small sample size. You've obviously seen a whole lot more of his play than I have. So yeah, I could absolutely be wrong. Just from what I've seen so far, these are the assumptions that I'm making. So I guess we'll find that out.
You're correct. You're correct. I mean, if he didn't start playing aggressive yet, but there's going to be a point where he plays really aggressive. So maybe I'm just remembering that part and not, you know, not before what happened here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, and we'll definitely look out for that in the future because he could prove me wrong here for sure. Yeah, he balls out three-handed and heads up. Okay, so, well, I guess it is a little easier to kind of go ham when you're three-handed because, I mean, you just have to be more aggressive in that situation, you know what I mean? So, but we'll see what happens. Like, obviously, we're going to discuss short-handed play in this tournament at some point, so we'll finish the handout here anyway.
Also, it's important to note that Oliver hasn't seen that at this point in the gameplay, right? So we should probably analyze the situation. It's like in real time as they're unfolding. I feel like.
Well, to be fair, we don't know, right? Because when they were down to not the final table, we don't know if they played together. We don't. There's a lot of unknowns, honestly.
Right. I was just going to say the same, Narco. I was just going to say the same thing. So we don't know the dynamic they already have.
Right.
Yep.
This tournament's like 100 hours of gameplay up until this point.
Right.
It could be best friends by now, for all we know.
Right. So we do see a check, which again, in theory, I think, although I think this should be 100% c-bet board, I think Odin will tell us the same. I don't hate the check for reasons we are already stated, and if he has seen some aggressive play here, I get behind it even more. So I can't condone this play. I mean, I can't hate condemn the play is what I was trying to say.
And a nice check back from Oliver might actually bait Holmes into stabbing at this board, especially now.
So you notice how she just says a nice check back by Oliver? She doesn't give reasons why. She's just saying nice check back because she sees Holmes has jack high and gives him a chance to bluff. She's not saying why, like this is a good check back. She's just seeing the two hands and saying, oh, nice check back, now Holmes might bluff, as opposed to like why the check in the first place is actually good. And this is kind of where I want to get you guys thinking. This is a lot. It's really easy for some of these commentators to just say A because of B, because they see the whole cards without thinking about why they want to be doing these hands and taking every single hand that these players can have into account. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just picked up a gutter ball. But nope, Holmes is holding on to those chips.
Well, his left arm is in a position where it seems more likely he's going to be checking than going towards the chips.
Norman has 20 years of experience with those statistics. You should see the notebook.
I would pick on you for that, but I'm telling you, the times people are...
So I don't hate the check fold here. He doesn't have the strongest draw. I would kind of be a little wary seeing Oliver check here on a really dry board. But that being said, his hand isn't strong enough to check call. But his draw also isn't that great, so I don't really hate it, but I would definitely be bluffing this hand, at least at some degree here. But yeah, I can't hate the check fold here either for what it's worth. So yeah, I guess we can wrap it up here. This was pretty fun here anyway. Hopefully we got through enough hands and you guys were kind of enjoying the footage here. Just wanted to bring up something a little bit different than what we've already been covering. So yeah, just hope you guys enjoy this. I guess, is there anything else we want to discuss before we bounce?
I'm good. I think it's cool to see like the biggest tournament every year and watch the ICM implications of that.
Yeah, for sure, Fountain of Flip, because there's absolutely never going to be like any higher ICM implications in any tournament ever than the World Series main event. So like we were discussing earlier, even though the pay jumps are really flat, $100,000 is nothing to, to say, oh, this is no big deal. Like that's usually what the Sunday Million is, like one of the biggest tournaments of the week. So, and we're talking about how small these pay jumps are. So it's a Sunday Million pay jump. That's a pretty relatively, big pay jump for what it's worth. So yeah, I think it's definitely interesting. Plus the fact that you're going to see a lot of like mediocre regulars to like amateurs, to like these guys who play their weekend home games, who had their big 20-man $500 satellite that end up getting here. So not only like do you see these massive ICM implications, but you also see a lot of different types of skilled players at the final table, which also makes the dynamic pretty interesting. Like before, we've been watching all the best players in the world play at these like 5K and 10K online final tables, and now we get to see all these different skill levels play with all these huge ICM implications. So I think this has been pretty fun to watch, and we'll definitely do this again here in the future. So yeah, anyone else have anything to touch on before we jet?
Kurt,
yeah.
How can you watch this and not want to play live poker?
If anything, like I'm watching this and I immediately start getting sick about playing live poker because I'm like, okay, do something. Like we're watching it at 1.25x speed. I'm speeding ahead and it's still too slow. So I mean, not that I don't have fun playing, but
a dick. I just call clock on people. Like they can hate me if they want. I just don't care.
Yeah, I call clock quite up. Probably a little too much. I was probably being a little too arrogant with it the last time I went, but I mean, as long as it's within reason, I mean, it's like, come on, like it wouldn't check on the flop.
If you're in a big spot, I'm okay with it. Like if the board texture.
Oh, lost Kenny. But yeah, anyway, so I agree with that too. Like if there's a lot of money in the pot and people are taking a long time, then yes, these decisions obviously take a lot of time. If somebody's taking 2 minutes to make a decision and there's like 70 bigs in the pot, I'm not going to call clock on anybody. Like that's ridiculous. But let's say cutoff opens and big blind defends and the flop's like ace 7-4 and the big blind takes like 20 seconds just to check first to act. Like I'm going to be a dick and call clock, the next time I see you do that, because that's ridiculous. Like And that's what you see a lot of online and live poker. Those kind of things, they drive me crazy.
I definitely think doing something like that, the main event, final table, maybe not 20 seconds, but if you want to balance, I don't like snap. I'll take 5 or 10 seconds. I'll take at least 5 or 10 seconds, even to consider close folds. But no more than that. I don't need 20 seconds to fucking check. I don't like to give too much away in terms of timing. But I don't take too long even with my big decisions unless I'm really in a weird spot.
Well, you probably should take a little bit more time because big decisions do require more time. And on the river, I mean, you always, like, I'm relatively quick with my flop and turn play. I mean, I'll even tank a little bit on the turn, but I won't, like, burn all the way down to the bottom of my time bank. But when it comes to the river, on every decision that I make, I usually burn to just before my time bank kicks in, because the river is always where the most important decision kicks in, where all the bigger bets are usually being put in. So just to balance that, I'll usually at least tank till right before my time bank activates. And then, of course, if you have bigger spots, you know, you want to take a little bit more time. But thankfully, I think for the most part, I'm in spots where I can make those decisions before my time bank activates. But I definitely wouldn't, like, you know, get on somebody's case about taking a decent amount of time on a river decision, because these are always the times where the most important decisions in the hands are coming into effect, the most amount of money is being put in. So this is just more so for those tedious, like, flop check back spots and really simple spots that really don't require a whole lot of time. But anyway, enough bitching about that.
30-minute delay. So by this time, if people are just tank folding their snap folds,
yeah,
you can call them out on it.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that 100%. The tank pre-flop 1500 World Series of Poker fold is the worst. Yep, I've seen plenty of that. So, yeah, I guess if there's nothing else real quick, I guess we'll wrap it up. Is that everything, guys, before I peace out?
Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, guys, for being around.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Agora. If you guys have any questions, you want to look into any of these spots that we talked about here, maybe in a little bit further detail, either anything in ICMizer or in Odin, we can run these as well. So yeah, just feel free to discuss those in the hand discussion thread if you guys want to talk about that later. But for now, we'll leave it off here and probably pick this up if you guys want. The next session we do, I'll ask you guys what we want to do next Tuesday anyway. And if you want to continue this, we can do that. If we want to hop into something else, we can do that as well. So yeah, for now, we'll wrap it up. I just want to say thanks again, guys. Appreciate all the feedback. I like how you guys are getting really involved here in the discussion. I'm noticing a lot of real thoughtful and a lot of thoughtful, well thought out decisions you guys are making. So I'm seeing a lot of improvement from you guys too. So I hope that you feel that your game's improving coming into these sessions as well. So I'm pretty happy to keep doing these, and yeah, look forward to the next one. So good luck out there on the tables, guys, and hopefully I see you for the next one. Thanks, guys.